Hi, Gabe. It's Holla at your motherfucking boy. So let's talk about some of the post-fight aftermath in this one, man. There's a lot of aftermath in this fight, man. A lot of aftermath in this fight, okay? So let's talk about Mikey Garcia. Let's start with the good first. Let's talk about Mikey Garcia, okay? Mikey Garcia, after winning this fight, this really catapults him to a new plateau to me, as far as his, I always knew Mikey Garcia was a good fighter. I always knew he was solid fundamentals, solid skills, solid boxing IQ. I always knew he was solid, but I could never quite put him into the upper echelon fighters. I could never quite place him in that category. He just never struck me as that top tier kind of fighter like that. You know what I mean? But after this win, after such a dominant performance over Adrien Broner, he did his homework. He came in there, studied up, prepared to take Adrien Broner out. I have no choice but to kind of put him up there, in that category as a top fighter. He made it look easy. This was kind of like a Floyd Mayweather-esque kind of performance. Now, mind you, he got hit a few times, but he didn't get hit that much. Honestly, he didn't take that much punishment. His face looks pretty much the same as it did before the fight. I was watching a video. I think I seen him eating like a cold pizza or some shit after the fight. So the guy went into this fight, came out unscathed, and put on a boxing clinic. Against, to me, somewhat of a top tier fighter. Now, a lot of people aren't going to consider Broner top tier. But Broner's accomplished a lot. A lot of y'all got to stop hating. Broner has accomplished a lot. It's 4-time, 4-weight division champion, no matter how it came, okay? Even if he fought bums for those belts, at those different weight divisions. He still did it, okay? He still did it. That still shows a lot, okay? But anyway, back to Garcia. So Garcia, man, after this, the sky's kind of the limit. I think it's very interesting, though. It's going to be very interesting, should I say, to see where he goes from here, though. Is he going to go back down to 135 and fight maybe Robert Easter or Terry Flanagan or one of those other guys at 135? Or is he going to stay at 140 and fight the Terrence Crawford versus Julius Ndongo winner? Or is he going to go to 147 and try to duke it out with guys like Earl Spence, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia? Is he going to take that route? I think this fight really puts him in a position to where he could really go anywhere he wants to go, and people are gonna want to fight him. People are gonna want to put those fights together after a win like this. So I think it's very interesting. No matter what he decides to do, I see him doing pretty well. I don't know about 147 though, but at 140, I'm not saying he beats Crawford. But if Ndongo somehow beats Crawford and he fights Ndongo, I think he has a very good shot against Ndongo. I think he has a very good shot against Crawford. From what I understand, Terrence Crawford and Mikey Garcia have a history. These guys fought in the amateurs. I think Crawford has won. I think Crawford beat Mikey Garcia in the amateurs. But, a lot of time has passed since the amateurs. They're both different fighters at this point. To see a fight in 2017, 2018, who knows? Okay, who knows? But I can assure you, Terrence Crawford isn't going to get blown out like no Adrien Broner. Terrence Crawford isn't going to fold. Terrence Crawford is technically speaking, Terrence Crawford is probably the best fighter, period. Terrence Crawford is really good. So that's going to be a very interesting fight. That's going to be a very tough fight for Mikey Garcia. And Mikey Garcia doesn't seem too enthused about fighting Terrence Crawford in the first place. But if that fight was to happen, that would be big for boxing at this point. Undisputed matchup at 140. If he goes back down to 135, I could see it being very interesting too. It would be very interesting to see him now in the ring with Robert Easter. Robert Easter now has to consider the fact that this guy beat Adrien Broner, his big bro. He just beat your big bro. And to now fight somebody who fought and beat your big bro, that's got to have some sort of mental I don't know what you say, some sort of mental thing with it. I can't find the right word right now. That's got to affect him mentally. There we go. That's got to affect him mentally in a sense. So they're now jumping there with Mikey Garcia. And I think they should make that fight happen. You know what I mean? If Robert Easter can go in there and beat Mikey Garcia, that would speak volumes. And I think Robert Easter has a very good chance at beating Mikey Garcia. I see Robert Easter as a more complete fighter to me than Adrien Broner. I think, and then Robert Easter's taller. Robert Easter uses his jab a little bit more. So I think that'd be a little bit more competitive of a fight than Adrien Broner. I just think that with Adrien Broner, the blueprint is just out there on him. You know what I mean? And the blueprint is out there, and Mikey Garcia did a very good job studying and following the blueprint to beat Adrien Broner. You know what I mean? You know, he didn't use the Marcos Maidana method, even though little shades of that kind of came about in the fight. Like when he was able to get Broner on the ropes, he would kind of throw those looping shots, you know, over the top and catch Broner with some shots. He didn't do a great job with that, but, you know, he didn't use Marcos Maidana, but he did use like the Paulie Malignaggi-esque kind of approach where he was kind of, you know what I mean, being active, throwing shots. And, you know what I mean, by him just being busy, even though he wasn't throwing hard shots the whole time, he would kind of back Adrien Broner. Because Adrien Broner, he doesn't, if you notice, he doesn't throw punches in exchanges. You know what I mean? He'll try to time you, you know what I mean, and counter punch you. But if he can't time you, he's not going to throw any punches in exchanges like that. Okay, so the Garcias studied him and realized that this was a good way to kind of neutralize him. So they just pretty much gave him angles and pretty much, you know, activity, you know, punches and bunches, throwing combinations at him, and pretty much froze Broner for the majority of the fight. Not only that, but Broner was sitting back, you know what I mean, waiting for a counterpunch opportunity. You know, that's what counterpunchers do. They wait for counterpunch opportunities, and there just was none. He wasn't able to time Garcia because Garcia did a good job of feinting and mixing up his timing and mixing up his approach and using different angles and doing different things. So, you know what I mean? But back to the aftermath. Okay, that's the fight shit. But back to the aftermath. So as far as the aftermath, so, you know, Garcia, he really does have a lot of options in front of him. Really does. Okay, sky's the limit for Garcia. Point blank period. No matter where he goes, it should be very interesting for the boxing fans. Now for Adrien Broner, now this is really, really a hard hit for Adrien Broner, man. You know, I did a video maybe like, I want to say maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking about if you're not winning, no one cares. Whoever's listening to this video, take a look at that video. I was kind of going in on Broner because, you know, I feel like just like what the fans feel. You know, we've seen Adrien Broner. We kind of fell in love with Adrien Broner, the fighter. You know what I mean? The flash and the flamboyancy and all that. And, you know, all that is cool. You know, all that is cool. But it's like, if you're not winning, nobody gives a fuck, man. Nobody really cares. And you really, you know, you're really forced to go back to the drawing board in this particular situation. You know what I mean? This is your third loss now. This is it. It's really time for you to ponder whether or not you want to continue to box. Okay, if you're going to continue to box, then some real big changes need to be made, okay, in your camp. Okay, Adrien Broner, now don't get me wrong, Adrien Broner came out in this fight to me and, you know, it was maximum effort. I think he was completely focused. I feel like he gave maximum effort. He trained for this fight. I feel like he really did. And I feel like as Adrien Broner, as an Adrien Broner fan, I feel like he did everything that he could do. You know what I mean? In that particular fight, or versus Mikey Garcia. But the blueprint's out on you now. You know what I mean? Just like I was saying earlier, the blueprint's out on you. So every time you go into one of these big fights, people are going to know how to beat you. What are you going to do to improve your game or to push your skill level to the next level to be able to compete with people now? What is Adrien Broner going to do to be able to compete? Because it's now been proven that he cannot compete at the highest level. He got blown out versus Sean Porter. This fight was also a blowout. What is Adrien Broner going to do to be able to compete now? Okay? And, you know, this has got to be really hard on Adrien Broner in general because this fight didn't need to happen. You know, and I did a video before about that too. To me, this was a meaningless fight. I've been saying that. This was a meaningless fight. Adrien Broner had no real reason to fight Mikey Garcia. You know what I mean? Maybe it was Al Heyman was pushing it and they wanted to see the best fights, and maybe Al Heyman gave him a list of names and he was like, whoa, I ain't fighting that motherfucker. Whoa, okay, Mikey Garcia, all right, I'll think about that. Maybe it was a situation like that. But to me, Adrien Broner, man, I mean, you're going into a fight, all right, that it really wouldn't have proved much if you had won the fight. If Adrien Broner would have beat the shit out of Mikey Garcia, who would have been saying Adrien Broner is the shit? Who would have been saying Adrien Broner is the best fighter at 140? Who would have been saying that? Nobody would have said that. You basically fought someone you had no business fighting, really, to me. You know what I mean? You could have fought somebody that at least you would have got more credibility for fighting. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not telling you to try to pull a Kell Brook and go up to 160 and fight Triple G or any kind of bullshit like that. But you maybe you could have went after a Sean Porter rematch, or maybe you could have went after someone else. You know what I mean? Someone else. Like, you know, I don't know. Maybe Al Heyman pushes one. I don't know. But to me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're Adrien Broner, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to fight Mikey Garcia in the first place. But anyway, all that shit aside, because, you know, that's all in the past now. The fight has happened. What's done is done. Okay, but all that shit in the past, you know, Adrien Broner, at this point, it's either elevate your skill level, elevate your game, or think about retirement. Seriously. Or just can fight bums. You know what I mean? Just, you know what I mean? Friday night fights kind of fighter. You know what I mean? Maybe fight bums. If that's what you're going to do. You know what I mean? If you want to just kind of milk the game and you never will really be the best, you know what I mean? Then, you know, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? But this was a crossroads fight. And, you know, we were all saying that this was a crossroads fight for Broner in general. You know what I mean? A loss here. A loss. This is really kind of a crippling loss, man. It really is. This is a crippling loss for Broner. He was really forced to consider retirement at this point. You know what I mean? And I know he's a young dude, man, but I mean, it don't make no sense sticking around in boxing, getting your ass whooped every time you decide you want to step up in competition. And a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? I'm not, you know. But, you know, this is your life on the line, man. This is your life on the line, you know. And then if you want to preserve your legacy, you are a 4-time world champion. If you want to preserve your legacy, it might be better to retire at this time anyway. You know, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I mean, Adrien Broner really needs to think about these things, you know. He really needs to think about these things. I'm not telling the man, retire. You know what I mean? You suck, retire. Like, it's not a conversation like that at all. But, you know, I feel like a conversation needs to be had between Adrien Broner and his camp. Adrien Broner needs to be thinking about making some major changes. You know? Major changes. I don't know if he needs to bring in another coach. And I mean, no disrespect to Mike Stafford, because I like Mike Stafford. Mike Stafford seemed like a real hard-nosed, you know, good coach. But maybe Mike Stafford has taught him everything that he could teach him. You know? Sometimes, you know, you can only grow as far as someone can take you. Maybe Mike Stafford has just taken him as far as he can take him. Maybe he needs to bring in somebody else. Maybe he needs to bring in a Virgil Hunter. Maybe he needs to bring in a Freddie Roach. Maybe he needs to bring in some other trainer. What's the guy's name? Earl Spence trainer. Maybe he needs to bring in a Derek James. Maybe he needs to bring in what's the guy's name, man? Shit. Whatever. Maybe he needs to bring in some new training. Maybe he needs to start trying to you adapt some new skills into his repertoire. You know what I mean? Or maybe he needs to go back to fighting how he fought before the Marcos Maidana loss. You know, Adrien Broner, after he lost to Marcos Maidana, he kind of became a totally different fighter, man. He became a totally different fighter, man. And you know, he had a lot of success fighting that way, you know. up until Marcos Maidana. Of course, you're not going to be able to fight no one bigger than you the way that you fought. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to fight anyone bigger than you utilizing that kind of style. So like 147 and 147 in general is going to be a little hard for you to do that. You know what I mean? But maybe you should consider going back to that style. I don't know, man. I don't know. Adrien Broner needs to be thinking about these things, though, man. He needs to be thinking. He needs to get out of his feelings. He needs to get out of his, you know what I mean? Get away from the yes man. He needs to get away from all the silly shit. Really take his time and think about these things. You know what I mean? Really take his time and think about these things, you know?